this series, a lot was made of this series going into it. Of course, Minnesota fans were not happy that we all picked the Lakers, and a little disrespectful to Minnesota. At least some people on the panel. I know you had just one of the most intelligent, analysis of this series that I've seen
Appreciate it.
across the internet. It was really straight focused.
A
But
plus.
regardless, Minnesota fans weren't happy. And what this series really came down to was in the fourth quarter, in the clutch, which star duo, which pairing, which team was going to be the one that performed. And I believe, just like everyone else thought, it would be the Lakers because you have Luka Doncic and LeBron James. They mentioned on the broadcast today that after the first three quarters, the Lakers actually had a positive point differential going up against this Minnesota Timberwolves team. But in the fourth quarter, if you look at all of the games they lost, going back to game one, they get outscored by 6 points in the fourth quarter. Game three, they get outscored by 10 points in the fourth quarter. Game four, they get outscored by 13 points in the fourth quarter when they just outscored Minnesota by 13 in the third quarter. And then tonight in game five, they get outscored 22 to 16 points for the Lakers. They only put up 16 points in a must have it game. And this game feels like there's like five different storylines in it because the Lakers come out super sluggish. Minnesota gets up to like a 12, 13 point lead early in this game. Then in the second quarter, Luka has the back injury. And, the couple possessions after that, he was not able to move at all. He goes into the tunnel right away to, with a minute left into the game. He comes out in that third quarter and he was excellent, at least offensively. He was able to hit a couple of threes. He was getting to the free throw line, and Luka looked, still a little hobbled, but hit a little bit into his game, a little bit of explosiveness there. But down the stretch in the fourth quarter, who I really thought had a great, great fourth quarter was Julius Randle. And Randle's been someone that's gotten criticized for right or for wrong in the playoffs for not showing up. And he didn't just show up in this series, but he showed up down the stretch in this game, especially because Anthony Edwards didn't have his normal Anthony Edwards heroics in this game where he's the guy closing out, he's the guy attacking the basket, he's the guy hitting these clutch threes and be able to facilitate. But it was really Julius Randle being able to close out this series. And I can't say anything else without saying Rudy Gobert's name because this was the Rudy Gobert game. I tweeted it about halfway, or maybe halfway through the third quarter. This is the best game of his career. What Rudy Gobert did in this game was the most impressive thing that I've seen him do. And again, there's no center on this team. JJ Redick really played 48 minutes of small ball. I don't count Maxi Kleber as a five by any means. The fact that he even got minutes in this game is a whole nother story. We could talk about JJ Redick and some of the decisions he made in this series. But when you're going to go small and when you take Jackson Hayes out of the lineup, regardless of who you are, this is what the center needs to do, let alone Rudy Gobert, who's a 7-footer, who's one of the best rebounders in the sport, of course, one of the best defenders in the sport. But he has a 27-point, 24 rebound game, including 9 offensive rebounds. He was a game best, plus 18 in this game, played 39 minutes, second most on the team. He was exceptional. If it wasn't for Rudy Gobert, this game is maybe a calm 10 to 15 point win for the Lakers. The way that he was able to dominate the glass on both sides, the way he was able to protect the paint, protect the rim when anyone was trying to go and drive against him, they were hesitating. They were pulling that ball out. So Rudy Gobert had an exceptional game. This was a real team effort from Minnesota because, again, Anthony Edwards didn't go out there and have 40 like he's been doing damn near all series. Jaden McDaniels didn't shoot, 80% from this game. He was only 2 for 4, ended up fouling out. This was everybody on the roster stepping up, and then down in the fourth quarter in the clutch, he was giving the ball to Julius Randle. He was able to get some switches onto Luka Doncic, take him to the rim, finish over him, and Minnesota advances. 4-1 series, really impressive because this Lakers team, maybe we overrated them a bit, but they were still a really good team post Luka, and this was a defense that statistically was really good. But now we look back at it, 2020 might have got a little overrated.
For everybody in the chat right now that's watching, make sure you guys drop a like for the chat. I see your messages. Drew, this week was the start of his nursing job, so he's had to wake up very early in the morning. So that's why he's probably very tired and he couldn't make it on stream. And Riv told you guys he's not sacrificing sleep. He can't. He said it's not going to happen. He was so excited for the playoffs, Dales, before it started. He was lecturing us on how excited he was about the playoffs. And then he's like, you know what? Playoffs are here. I can't sacrifice sleep. I can't. It's not exciting enough. But neither here or there. Um, Here's how I feel about this series, and I just want to talk about this particular game. Rudy Gobert is the star of the night. You laid it out perfectly. The Minnesota Timberwolves went small for the majority of this series. This game specifically was the biggest they went. Rudy Gobert played 38 minutes, which was the most this series. He had 27 points, 24 rebounds, 9 offensive rebounds. The Wolves out rebounded the Lakers, 65 rebounds to 48 rebounds, and you knew it was going to be that type of night from the first quarter. The first couple of possessions, you saw Minnesota miss like 4 straight threes, and the Wolves kept coming down with offensive boards. Minnesota shot 15% from three. They went 7 for 47. The difference in this game was the extra possessions and Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle coming up big and playing like one of the best front courts in basketball. These are not updated, these numbers for game 5. But through 4 games, Rudy Gobert, when he's guarded Austin Reeves, Reeves has went 5 for 15, 33%. Luka has went 5 for 14, 35%. LeBron has went 4 for 13, 31%. Rui has went 3 for 11, 27%. For somebody that always gets made to be the butt of the joke whenever there's a big shot hit over him, even though he guards really well, this was a fantastic series for him on defense. You saw in game 1, people put up some highlights of, or game 2, and people put up some highlights of him getting scored on in the game. But this series, he's been elite on defense with the switches. It is very reminiscent of last year versus the Suns when he guarded KD and Booker and Beal in switches, and he neutralized them. We have to praise Rudy Gobert because he is one of the most underrated defenders of this generation. There's a reason why he's a multiple time defensive player of the year, and he gets a bad rap. And people don't look all the way into the numbers and how well he plays. And when he plays well, people don't acknowledge it. But the problem in Utah was always the perimeter defense with that team. It was never him himself. He had to cover up for so many things. People often bring up the Terrence Mann situations, but you see this Wolves team. They have great perimeter defenders. They're able to help Rudy Gobert to where he doesn't have to do everything on defense. And he shined in this series, and he deserves a lot of credit. Anthony Edwards, 15 and 11, 5 for 19, didn't have a good game. Julius Randle, 23 and 5. He was really good. I mentioned that the Wolves shot poorly. The Lakers, this is, I want to touch on this because in the fourth quarter, they didn't generate good offense. Reeves for the game shot 36% from the field. Lucas shot 39% from the field. LeBron shot 43% from the field with 20% from three. In order for the Lakers to win this game and win this series, they had to shoot well from three. They shot 30% from three. You're not going to lose the rebounding battle, be a worse defensive team, shoot bad, and beat a team as good as Minnesota. It's just not going to happen. It exposed a lot of things with the team that I want to touch on in a little bit before I'm done giving the Wolves flowers. I just feel like this team deserves ultimate flowers. I think they are making the Western Conference Finals. I think it will be OKC versus Minnesota in the WCF. And what you mentioned earlier about my analysis on them, I feel like it was fair. The biggest wild card in it was the clutch time offense. All signs in the regular season pointed to the Lakers being a better clutch time offense. And as you said, that the fourth quarter would be decided by a couple of possessions and the Wolves would come out on top. This is the same Wolves team that a couple games before the playoffs blew a 20 plus point lead to the Bucks, and they had trouble against a 2-3 zone defense in the regular season. They had a negative record in clutch time games. This was one of the worst clutch time teams in the NBA this past season, and the Lakers were one of the best. So when you think that you're getting a close game, you expect Luka and LeBron to come out on top, and they didn't play well enough. Reeves didn't play well enough. That's what this series boggles down to. I think Luka deserves credit for coming back hurt and playing well, but they didn't get enough from him. You look at the final numbers for this series. Luka averages 37 and 6, but his defense was a problem. He wasn't the most efficient from three, just 35%. LeBron averaged 25, 9, and 6. He was efficient, but it's just they didn't get enough from the role players. And that's what I want to get into in a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts and what you have to say about Minnesota a little bit more, but Minnesota really just deserves a lot of credit And I do wish I picked them because all the analysis points pointed to them. But this is a great victory. And for so many players that get a bad rap, to Gobert, to Randall, to Jaden McDaniels, they really flipped the script and they played amazing.
Yeah, it's a bit of redemption story across the board. You mentioned it, and I laughed when you said it, but Rudy Gobert, even with his 4 Defensive Player of the Years, still is underrated as a defender because you look at the series last year against Dallas, and Luka Doncic hits a game-winning three to send them to the finals, and all of a sudden he can't guard, and I think it's just unfair because you're asking a guy who's 7'2" to guard one of the best perimeter players, one of the best players, period, in the NBA out on the perimeter. That's just not his game. And people are going to really fixate on that. And they have throughout all of his career. But this was one of those series where Rudy Gobert was out there and he was moving his feet on the perimeter. And was he playing picture perfect defense? No, but when you're 7'2", as long as you're within range for them, you have a pretty good job of being able to close out. And I thought that's what Rudy was doing consistently in this series. That, of course, he's not going to stay perfectly in front of you, but he's going to make those shots difficult. And he has such a crazy reach that you're going to have to put arc over him if you're shooting like a step back three, as we know Luke and LeBron love to do so much. We could get into the Lakers a little bit here because there's a couple of things I'm thinking. Number one, matchups are so important in the playoffs. Riv says it all the time, but you really just think like, what happens if the Lakers win a couple more games and they're the 2 seed and they're going up against, the 7 seeded Warriors? Or what happens if they lose a couple games and they're the 7 seed and they go up against the 2 seeded Rockets? And now their path to a potential second round or WCF looks incredibly different because they have a much more favorable first round matchup. As hindsight being 2020, Minnesota was a terrible matchup for them. So I do just want to be a little, um, careful about how we judge the Lakers here because if they did go up against a team like the Rockets, for example, even though we all would have picked them and they go and they win that first round, and then say in the second round, it evens out, so they play at Denver or they play whoever it might be, basically anyone outside of OKC or Minnesota, and they have another favorable matchup. Now they could be in the WCF, but there's really 2 teams I think stuck out to me for looking now what was negative for the Lakers, and that was Minnesota. I think that would have been OKC, but it is so matchup dependent that fixating on the result could be a little, misleading. With that being said, this was a series where both Luka and LeBron played pretty awful in the fourth quarter, right? Nearly all of these games were super close in the fourth quarter. Their 2 star players were basically no shows in those moments. And all of these games came down to the wire. It's very reminiscent of the last 2 years of what it's been for the Los Angeles Lakers when they were going up against Denver. And it felt like Denver just has their number, right? It's not a Lakers issue. It's Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, and they're the champs. They just have our number. But we're going on 3 years in a row now where, of course, 2 years ago, the Lakers won some playoff series. So I'm not saying they can't win the playoffs, but we're going on 3 years in a row now where the Lakers have been in all of these games in these high stake moments. They've been in the lead for 3 quarters in a lot of these. And then the fourth quarter comes around and they're not able to put it away. That's been with different coaching staffs, right? Whether you look at Darvin Ham or JJ Redick, that's been with different co-stars with Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic. That's been with different role players, but that's just been the story of the Lakers for the last 3 years, where for 3 quarters they look like the better team. And I think this Timberwolves maybe not as much, but at least in those Denver series, they look just as good, if not as better. But then the fourth quarter comes around and they're just not able to put that team to bed. Again, they've had great offensive teams, great defensive teams, some good role players, some not good role players, but it's been the same outcome for 3 straight years now for this Los Angeles Lakers team. And to talk about what they could possibly do in the future, you're going to have Luke on this team. You're going to have Bron on this team. I think Austin Reeves, even though he struggled in this series, he has shown in the past to be a really good playoff performer. So I don't think, his job is in jeopardy, especially with the salary he's making. It's going to be difficult to move off Austin Reeves, his $12, $13 million a year, to find someone who's as impactful as him, even though he has some deficiencies, specifically on defense. And even with ball pressure, I thought in this series, like when Ant Edwards or anyone was getting up into his face, he definitely got rattled and was just completely out of it. He wasn't really used as a playmaker much at all. As well, I heard you on your TikTok saying that, of course, not having a pick and roll mate is definitely going to hurt him there too. But when you look at some of these role players and who they could bring in, the number one thing is they need a center. They need a center desperately. I thought JJ Redick's decision to completely go away from Jackson Hayes in this game specifically probably bit him in the butt a little bit. I feel like at some point, Rudy Gobert has a career game against you. Is there a different button you can press? Like if Maxi Kleba is getting minutes, I feel like Jackson Hayes could probably get minutes too. Maxi Kleba hasn't played basketball in basically all year, it feels like. So number one is getting a real center who can be a vertical threat, who can defend. Of course, Mark Williams was, their target and then the physical fell through. But then some of these role players, you really need to kind of model what Dallas did last year when it's Derrick Jones and it's PJ Washington, and you have guys that can defend around Luka and Reeves and sometimes LeBron James, especially in the regular season, because there's going to be natural deficiencies on any team. And for this Lakers team, it's going to be defense specifically on the perimeter, right? Like Luka Doncic, he's going to get blown by. Just what it is. Austin Reeves, the same thing. He's either going to get blown by or he's too small for a lot of guys. But if you have a backline defender that can make up for that, your defense can at least be respectable. And I feel like in this series, and I'm not sure what the defensive rating said, but in the clutch time, it was a lot easier for the Wolves to be like, all right, we could get past Luka or Reeves, and now there's nobody at the paint. This is going to be pretty easy to get buckets when we really need it to. So I think getting number one, obviously a center who could play playoff minutes, who could defend the rim, who could be a vertical threat for LeBron, Reeves, and Luka Doncic, and then getting some better defensive personnel. The only guy that I really feel strong about is DFS. He fouled out in this game. Like DFS is someone that you could rely on defensively out of the bunch they have now, at least compared to, like the Rui Hachimuras and whatnot. But those are the two biggest things that I think the Lakers need to do.